Welcome to the Real Appreciation Podcast. I'm David Claire Bennett, and with me today is a professional wrestler and producer currently signed to TNA, but still killing it on the indies, a professional speaker and host of the Wrestling is Life podcast. Please welcome to the show, Cody Deaner.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to this.
You know, I'm a big fan, and I don't know how many people realize this, but you made your TNA debut way back in 2009, teaming with the legendary ODB. So I want to ask you, how did your first run with TNA come to fruition?
Oh, that's quite a long story, but I will give you the abridged short version. Otherwise, we'll be here forever. I'm a talker, so feel free to cut me off at any point, which
Okay.
I know is not a good host quality. As a podcast host, it's not good to cut off your guest when they're on the tangent. But sometimes it might be necessary for me because as a speaker and a podcaster, I got a gift of gab. But the abridged version basically is I got hired for a tournament they were doing at the time called the World X Cup, where they were hiring a bunch of international wrestlers, and that did not happen. I got hired for that, but then I was never in the tournament. So I was very down. I was very glum. I was very discouraged because I thought, well, this was my one shot. Uh, and just again to let your listeners know why this was kind of more of a downer than usual for somebody else in my position. I'm a Canadian, and getting a work permit to work in the United States is very, 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 very difficult. And I got that finally. So then this was my opportunity to use that and to have this moment wrestling on television. And then it got taken away and it was like, nope, you're not going to be in the tournament. So I thought that was the end of this opportunity, but really that door closed and it was just another one ended up opening. Was because I wasn't in that tournament. They thought my character that I was portraying on the independent scene was a strong one and could be used in more of a featured role, and that's why they ended up putting me together with the one and only ODB, which stands for one dirty. You can guess what the B stands for those non-wrestling fans. She was awesome. She drank out of a flask. I drank brewskis. She lived in a trailer. I lived in a trailer park, and we had a blast together. So that's the quick abridged version of how I got together with ODB, and I had a blast in my first run.
Where is ODB now? Do you know?
Yeah, she is running a food truck. She's born and raised in Minnesota, so she's still based out of there, but she has a food truck that she travels all across the country. She's got ODB's Meet and Greet food truck where she goes around. She does all of her own food, and then she also does independent here and there, but she does a lot of bigger kind of wrestling conventions. If she might wrestle on that convention, then she's got her food truck set up outside. But she's been very successful with that, and she also just wrote a book and an autobiography, the very first TNA knockout to put her story down on paper. So she's doing really well. I interviewed her for my podcast, and we had a really good chat. And that's what she's up to. She's killing it, and she's an entrepreneur. She's hustling. She's positive. She's a motivated person, and I'm still in touch with her here and there, and she's doing really, really well for herself.
Man, I'm so glad to hear that. Hey, we talked about your debut in TNA, but you also had a few matches in WWE, one of them on a SmackDown taping back in 2004 when you faced WWE Hall of Famer, Olympic gold medalist Kurt Angle. Now, I know that match didn't necessarily end up in your favor, but how does it feel to have at least gotten that opportunity to be put in that spot?
Oh man, it was a dream come true. I was a Hulkamaniac. I was a WWF kid since the age of 5. All I ever wanted to do was become a professional wrestler, and it became my goal at that young age to be able to say that I wrestled in a WWF ring with the same heroes that I grew up watching, and then I accomplished that. So to kind of put that into words is difficult. It was a proud moment, a gratifying moment, kind of all this hard work had paid off. All the naysayers that said that that was impossible had to eat their words. It was a lot of different things. But even though, like you said, it didn't go my way, it's definitely something that I use now in my speaking career. It's something that I talk about with young kids when I talk about goal setting and having this goal and this dream that you want to achieve. And even though people tell you it's not possible, I use that example and say, look, guys, when I was 5 years old, I was wrestling in my living room, with my LJN action figures and imagining and dreaming in my mind that I'm not in my living room. I'm in a WWF ring, and it became my goal to accomplish that. And everybody laughed at me that I said that to, and I was able to make that dream come true. So if that's possible for some skinny little kid from this small town in the middle of nowhere to go on and make that possible, I know that that motivates a lot of the kids that I speak to, and whatever their dream is, it's whether it's it doesn't matter what it is. Some of these kids want to be musicians. Some of these kids want to play video games for a living, and everyone tells them that they're crazy. And it's like, well, it's actually not that crazy. That is possible. Some of these kids want to be a podcaster. It's all these kids have these really cool dreams, and I just encourage them and let them know that it's possible, despite the naysayers and despite your circumstance. Because I come from a situation that is the circumstance and likelihood of me making that possible was very, very, very small, and it happened. So it was a dream come true, man. It was really, really cool.
Your story absolutely resonates with me, man. For real. I'm in bumfuck West Virginia right now recording this podcast. Like it's just always the same thing, I've gone on to work in a movie with Eric Roberts and everybody laughed at me, dude. To this day I can't get coverage at all in my hometown. It's just they don't believe in us. You get it.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I think um there's even something biblical about that, in that I remember hearing once, um, prophets in their own town, you know, aren't respected, and even Jesus in his hometown wasn't like accepted. So, but went out and took his ministry out into the world and gained a following, but couldn't gain a following in his own hometown. I think there's something to that. I think that it's harder to get footing or traction kind of where you're from. Um, but then there's also something that's strange also about when you do make it outside of that, the people that are still stuck there are kind of like, huh, oh, and they kind of have one of two responses. Sometimes they're like, oh wow, that's so awesome. You got out and you did this thing. Good for you. And then there's the other thing, part of human nature of that's usually comes from the side of jealousy. That's like, oh man, like this guy made it out and I didn't, and it's a poor reflection on them. And then they kind of they don't respond to that as positively. And I've seen both sides. I've seen the people that are kind of, you know, have acted somewhat negatively to my success. But on the flip side, I've probably had more that have reacted positively and are very just happy for me. Um, but a lot of people think that I would maybe wrestle more locally or even speak more locally than I do. I most of my speaking is not done within an hour radius of my house, even though there's plenty of schools that are around me. I usually have to travel out of country or out of province to go speak, because the local ones are like, oh, it's just a local guy, and they don't necessarily see the value in it as much as, man, someone will fly me all the way across the country to go speak to their students. So I know what you mean. It's an interesting thing, but I always try to focus on the positive rather than the negative, and keep moving forward. So yeah, you know what I mean. I know what you mean. We're just two dudes from middle of nowhere that have kind of doing what we do and doing what we love. So it is something that I'm proud of.
As far as I'm concerned, you've made it, Cody. I've made it in my own way, but you've made it too. And just remind yourself and pat yourself on the back because you deserve it.
Yeah, man, that's true. That's very, very, very true. And I'm also blessed in that I have people that would pat me on the back too. I don't have to do like a crazy amount of back patting of for myself. I have a very supportive wife. I have 4 kids. And then also in the businesses that I'm in, that even though they can be negative, I surround myself with positive people. So like I have positive reinforcement coming my way every day. Like I go into a school and speak, and I got teachers telling me that I'm awesome. I got students telling me that I'm awesome. I got students that are crying, coming up to me, telling me how amazing my speech was and it changed their life. I get comments like that all the time that are like a constant reminder to me that no, okay, no, I've made it in the sense that I'm I'm where I'm supposed to be and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So you're right. I do pat myself on the back when needed, but I don't have to do it a lot because I'm very lucky that I have a lot of people doing that for me.
Now, over the past few months, WWE and TNA have had this working relationship, which for so many years, it felt so out of the question. But now you've got names like Joe Hendry and Jordan Grace appearing on NXT. Come on, I gotta ask, do you think there's a chance we see Cody Deaner in NXT?
Look, anything is possible. And I know that's kind of a cliche. I could even say, well, never say never and tease and all these wrestler cliches of whatever. But honestly, in all honesty, I have not been approached. I'll just tell you this right now. I've not been approached to have that become a reality. But with the way the wrestling industry is right now, with how positive the relationship is right now between TNA and NXT, I can honestly say I wouldn't be surprised if I showed up at a TNA taping and got approached by someone saying, "Hey, what do you feel about this? What do you feel about that?" Because nothing would surprise me at this point in terms of this crossover because it's going so well and just because it's it's this time in wrestling that I just when I've been watching what's going on, I try to put myself in the seat of a wrestling fan. I try to do that with everything that I do in wrestling. Try to like take it from the perspective, okay, how would a fan respond to this? How would I have responded to this when I was a wrestling fan? I try to put myself in that position. And when I do that with what's happening right now, it's so freaking exciting. Like this is the type of stuff that you kind of dreamed of when I was a kid watching, WWF and WCW. Like, what would happen if these guys wrestled each other? Or then you go back and go, what would happen when the AWA guy might have got in there with the NWA guy, which did happen back in the day. It was happening more kind of before, the WWF takeover. It did happen more. There was more crossover, but now we're back at this full circle where there is more talent exchanges and these kind of dream scenarios that yeah, it is just that. It's these dream scenarios where you feel like you're watching it and you're in this fever dream going, what? Huh? Like why is there a TNA logo on an NXT show? And why is there an NXT logo on a TNA show? And it's like, this is cool. And the fans don't know what's gonna happen. And that's the cool thing is that neither do the wrestlers. Like a lot of the stuff that's happening on TV, I'm a producer for TNA, so I have more backstage information than the average person, and I'm watching stuff on TV being surprised going, "Oh, wow, we did that. That's cool." So it's even neat for me and I'm more in the know than the average person, so I can only imagine how exciting it is for for the wrestling fans. So that's my long-winded answer of is there a chance of Cody Deaner being on NXT? Maybe. It wouldn't surprise me, and I'd be freaking pretty excited for that to happen. So
If there was ever a time to say never, now is that time.
absolutely. That absolutely. I mean, that's a t-shirt idea right there for the merch folks. If you want to throw those logos up on a t-shirt with NXT and TNA and with that phrase never say never, it would be true to form for sure.
Now, this next one isn't a question, but I wanted to take the time, and I was telling you about your podcast off camera here, but I wanted to take the time to tell you something personal that means a lot to me. So you've got an amazing podcast, Cody. Sincerely, I really am a fan of your Wrestling is Life show. You did 2 episodes with Sammy Callahan, and when you guys were talking about growing up in wrestling and Sammy watching horror movies at this incredibly inappropriate age, just like myself, being a horror writer, that whole conversation just resonated with me. And it felt like I was hanging out with 2 friends and we're all just chilling and shooting the shit. I think that's really awesome. Your ability to be able to make your podcast feel like such of a open and welcoming space. I don't know. I don't know. There's something about how you have this ability to make people feel something. And as a wrestler, I know you know how important that is to invoke such an emotion. Myself as a writer, same thing. Again, this isn't really a question. I just wanted to take this time to tell you how much your podcast means to me and how this one in particular got me through some pretty dark times because I was going through a period last year, not to get too personal, but I'm open about it because in case it helps somebody. I was dealing with these mental health issues and I attempted to take my own life. And a big part of what really helped me get through this whole thing was my amazing partner, Katie, professional wrestling, horror movies, and your podcast was one I was listening to religiously. So thank you for that, Cody. You mean a lot to me. Not a question, just wanted to express gratitude and appreciation to you.
Well, let me just say that I believe that everything happens for a reason, and to be a little open with you and give you kind of some inside personal stuff. There's some over the last like 3 months, I've been really questioning my podcast and the listenership, and should I even continue doing it, or if I do, should I continue it in the same like format, or should I switch things up? Like kind of all these questions, and kind of wondering like, is there anybody listening? Or I do know that there's people listening. I have a listenership because I can see the algorithm, and I can not the algorithm, but I can see the demographics. So I know there's listeners, but it's kind of like, oh, I was hoping it might be a little bit bigger than it is right now, and I'd have more people listening. But what you just told me is very, very reassuring, and also connects exactly with what I say to youth when I go into schools, and I tell them something that I said earlier. I said focus on the positive rather than negative. And I also tell them to focus on the quality rather than the quantity. And I say that in terms of their relationships or whatever it is that they're putting out there. Really just focus on the quality of what you're doing, the quality of your conversations, the quality of your business if you're a business person, the quality of your content if you're dealing with social media, and in this case, the quality of your show if you're putting out something into the world in that way rather than the quantity. And you just proved that. I think that that is the proper mindset to have, because dude, if you were the only person that listened to that episode and that was able to help you through the tough times that you're having, then man, that is 1000% worth it to me, and makes me go, okay, that was what I should have been doing, and I'm glad that I put that out there. So I know that wasn't a question, but this is what I'm saying to what you said. Thank you for telling me that. And that just reassures me that, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I believe that everything happens for a reason. You were supposed to listen to that episode. I was supposed to record it. I was supposed to continue doing what I was doing, even though there was times when I questioned it. And you just tell me that just kind of motivates me to keep going, keep moving forward, and keep doing what I'm doing. So thank you. I appreciate that very, very much.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you. There are three people who actually inspired me to start this podcast. You're one of them. Another one is Chris Van Vliet. Solid Monster sounds off. And listen, I've been doing this now for 4 weeks, and by no means am I better than anybody. I am only better than the person I was yesterday, and I'm so proud to be better than him. And I will continue to be better than me tomorrow. But man, in 4 weeks, we've already achieved over 150,000 views, 2.7 thousand subscribers. And after this episode, we're going to hit 1 million, I'm sure, Cody. No, man, I'm just expressing gratitude, and I'm just showcasing to you that you are an inspiration, and I'm putting you over so much here. I'm so sorry. um,
Hey, it's all good, man. I mean, as pro wrestlers love getting put over for
yeah,
one, but I mean, this isn't just like, hey, man, you've had a good career. I mean, this is real stuff,
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I also believe in just being authentic, right?
Yes.
And that's one thing I've just tried to do with my show, is just kind of try to be authentic through it, and then hopefully people can connect to that authenticity, which is what you're doing right now. I mean, this isn't normally what you might not normally be what happens when you're interviewing somebody, is you just kind of start making comments and putting them over. But I mean, I feel you, man. Like, you're just being real. We're just being authentic. This is good stuff. I'm happy that you're doing what you're doing. And 4 weeks in, man, that's fresh.
I just got a chance to be a part of Lionsgate's press tour for Borderlands. I don't know if you saw my last interview. I interviewed Benjamin Byron Davis with the guy who voices Dutch from Red Dead Redemption.
Oh, sweet, man. Yeah, so you're getting some very like unique people that are, you know, like have some very niche and important roles within their industry, which I think is really unique and really, really, really cool.
I want to talk to you about something you talked about recently, and I want to talk to you about how you've been very inspiring, that being your journey outside of wrestling. Now, you're a professional speaker who goes across America, not just locally, like you mentioned, to share your story with the youth. When did you start doing this, and can you tell me why you feel your story has resonated with so many people out there?
So I basically just got asked to speak at my own high school. Um, so that's a little bit contradictory to what I said earlier in terms of not getting appreciated in your own hometown, but that's how it started. Um, was I got asked to speak at my old high school because I had this one teacher who was super awesome. His name was Mr. Loney. He was my English teacher in high school and my basketball coach. He was really awesome. And he saw that I achieved these goals and he said, "Hey, can you come and talk to the youth and these young kids that live in the same kind of dead end small town that I grew up in? Can you come and talk to them about kind of how you were able to achieve your goals?" So I did. I got asked to do it again, and then I got asked to do it again, and then other schools learned about it. I got asked to do it again, and then all of a sudden I realized people do this for a living. I wonder if I could. And then it ends up that now I am. It's something that it's one of my careers that I do for a living, and I love it. I also have a teaching degree, so and I taught for a number of years, so I know how to speak to young people. I've also had a lot of time standing at the front of a classroom trying to keep young people engaged in a lesson that they might not care about, but try to make that lesson engaging, even though they could genuinely care less about it, but to try to make them care about something that they don't. So I have practice doing that. I have practice getting in front of a crowd and making them care about me for the 10 minutes that I'm in the theater in the round. So I have all these skills that are absolutely perfect for being a speaker. And then to answer the second point is why does it resonate? I think it just resonates because I'm not I'm not a superhero from in size. I'm not a superhero in my abilities, and I did not come from a privileged life that I got handed all these things and said, "Here you go. Here's the mantle and the silver spoon. Take take this where you want," because I do know people where that's happened for them, and that's not my case. And most people are not in that scenario. They're in mine. You grow up in a small, tiny little town, in the middle of nowhere. Me, even more so than some folks. The town I grew up in is a population of less than 200 people. And I go into small towns and I say that, and they're like, "Oh, wait, I thought my town was small." It's like, yeah, man, we don't even have a subway. Like, we don't even have a traffic light. Some of our intersections don't even have stop signs, let alone stop lights. It's like you go up to the intersection and you just get to pick who goes first, So I think that's partly what inspires them is, oh, okay, this guy that kind of comes from nothing is something and is positive and happy about it. I'm very proud of where I grew up and love my upbringing, and it couldn't have been better. And it's still my favorite place to go. I grew up in a small town. It's called Port Bruce, Ontario, Canada. It's rural town. However, it's got a beach because it's on one of the Great Lakes of Lake Erie. So my favorite beach, my favorite place of solitude in the world is to go to Port Bruce, Ontario and sit on the beach and swim with my kids. So I love where I grew up, but I think my story just resonates for a number of reasons. One of those I think just being that I wasn't handed anything in my life. I had to put in the work to achieve what I've achieved, and I'm also just, I guess, authentic in terms of how I deliver that story and that content to people. And whatever it is, whether I'm speaking in you know, a giant school in California with, a bunch of minorities that can't relate to the crazy looking bearded white dude from Redneckville, or I'm going to a small rural town in this little elementary school in the middle of nowhere of Saskatchewan, where they live. Like, I've been in both, and they relate to me for some reason, I can't always put my finger on it. I think it has something to do with my authenticity. Um, but man, do I love it. I'm so happy that I found speaking as a second career because it's gratifying on this whole other level. Um, Wrestling is very gratifying. It's something that I love very much. I love putting smiles on people's faces and inspiring people in that way. But I also really love inspiring people with my story and just getting up in front of a room full of kids and encouraging them and inspiring them.
I just want to say that I've read about your story and we kind of share some similarities. We both talked about being from small towns and nobody really believing in us. But both of us also had the aspiration of becoming a professional wrestler. I even did some stuff with pro wrestling. I've worked with some indie companies doing some backstage work, some color commentary. Yeah, oh, I still have that dream, man.
You got
Dream,
the voice
man.
for it, brother. You got the voice for it. Yeah.
Hopefully one day somebody hires me.
Yeah.
Good on you for knowing your passion and for following it through till the end. And as we wind down here, I want to ask you, do you believe in Joe Hendry?
Ah, of course I believe in Joe Hendry. How can you not believe in Joe Hendry? Uh, it's really cool seeing what he's doing. And going back to actually what you said to me earlier, you said, if you could, you said, I see you more as a human being than as a professional wrestler. Uh, I when I look at Joe Hendry, I see the human being that is Joe Hendry because I know Joe personally. I've had him on my podcast. I have, produced some of his matches and I've been in the ring with Joe. I know Joe from a lot of different angles and I see Joe as the whole human being like you said earlier, and Joe Henry is a freaking awesome human being.
I'm so happy for him.
Yeah, man, he's such a cool dude. And then when one of the good guys succeeds in professional wrestling at the level that he's succeeding right now, firing on all cylinders, it just puts a smile on my face because, sometimes, you know, they always the cliche that the good guys always win in the end. That's a movie trope, but sometimes that doesn't happen in real life. Sometimes the bad guys win in real life. But when the good guys do succeed and they make it and they crush it, it gives me hope that, yep, there is also truth to the fact that the good guys can win and do it their way, do it the right way, and that's the way Joe's done it. He's just an awesome human being and really good at what he does. I'm super happy for him big time.
Where can people find you online, Cody?
I'm on social media wise. I'm on Twitter, X, whatever the hell we're calling it nowadays. I'm on Instagram. I'm also have a Facebook page. It's all at Cody Deaner, CodyDeaner. I have a website that indie promoters can get a hold of me because I'm still doing independent wrestling shows, which is the one thing that I really love about wrestling with TNA is I still have the ability to go out there on the independent scene and mix it up with new up and coming talent and meet the fans firsthand and get into these intimate settings on the indie scene, which I love and I'll never stop doing as long as I'm able. So bookers can get a hold of me just on my website, codydeaner.com. And then if anybody's interested in my speaking and is, hears this and is like, oh man, I want to get Cody at my school, or tell my friend's a teacher, maybe that my teacher friend could get Cody at their school. You could also go to codydeaner.com, which will send you to another website, which is my speaking business, which is chrisgrayspeaks.com. That's Gray with an A, Chris Gray Speaks. I speak under my birth name, which is Chris Gray. For a number of years, I was speaking as Cody Deaner, but now I speak under my birth name, like going back to that authenticity. I let the kids know the real me and the stage me. So chrisgrayspeaks.com has all the information about what I'm doing in the speaking world, how they can book me, my topics, testimonials from satisfied teachers and students who've been changed by my storytelling. And yeah, that's how people can get a hold of me. And if they want to listen to Wrestling is Life is Wrestling, that's also found on all podcast platforms. And all the links to that and ways to watch that, whether it's on YouTube or listening to it on their podcast platform, is also all at codydeaner.com.
one of the best podcasts out there. Make sure you check out Cody's professional speaker website at chrisgrayspeaks.com. I will link all of your socials, including booking inquiry, contact information, everything. You can book them online for presentation inquiries at chrisgrayspeaks.com. Until next time, I'm David Claire Bennett. He is Cody Deaner. This is Real Appreciation, and we are out.